Who are the teams that can make it to Super Bowl 56? That is the question I'm going to be answering in today's video. And just real quickly, I'm sorry if I sound a little bit down. It's because I was sick a little earlier in the week, but I'm better now. So that's why I'm going to be recording this video. And let's get right into it real quickly before we do. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video for more content. All right, so there are 10 teams that I think can get to the Super Bowl as of December 22nd, 2021. And I'm going to go from the 10th most likely team to the most likely team as we kind of talk about the teams and their strengths and their weaknesses, why they could, why they couldn't. So the first team is the Tennessee Titans. Now, why could the Titans potentially make the Super Bowl? The first reason is Derrick Henry. Now, Derrick Henry has been hurt, and that has severely hurt their offensive production and efficiency and run game as a whole. But Derrick Henry, he was on pace for 1,991 yards. He had 2,000 yards last season in 2020 in just 16 games. And he has been arguably the best running back in football for 3 straight years now. He's been excellent. He's amazing. In the playoffs, we've seen him perform, specifically in 2019, where he basically carried the Titans to the AFC Championship game. And I mean, once he comes back, assuming there isn't much rust, he's still going to be the best running back in football. And when there are some vulnerable run defenses out there, such as the Patriots, which we saw could get ran on against the Colts, we also did see, we've seen other teams, the Chargers, for example, if they were to play a team like that, Derrick Henry could certainly run on some of these AFC defenses, and in the NFC as well. Teams like the Packers and the Rams and the Cardinals have questionable run defenses. So Derrick Henry for sure could have big games against some of these teams and could help the Titans to victories. The Titans are very battle tested. They have 5 wins versus current playoff teams. They've beaten Indianapolis twice. They've beaten the Rams. They've beaten who else have they beaten? They've beaten a couple other very good teams. So they've beaten the Bills. There's another one there. So the Titans are battle tested. They've beaten good teams. They've played good teams. They've been in the playoffs for the last few years. They've really been consistently in the playoffs. I would say they've made it the last 2 years. So the Titans, they aren't gonna be just intimidated by anyone. They know they've played a lot of the teams. They've played the Chiefs. They've played the Patriots. They've played, the Colts. They've played the Bills. They've played all these teams in the AFC that they're gonna potentially have to face again. And so I do think that is a good factor to them that they are battle tested against these teams. They have an improved defense, and I think that's the underrated thing about the Titans this season. Not a lot of people are talking about it because they've lost games without Derrick Henry, but their defense has been really improved from last season. The Titans' defense currently ranks higher than they did last season in these categories: points, yards, yards per play, passing net yards per attempt, and rushing net yards per attempt. Their defense has been markedly better than it was last season. Last season, their defense was bad, really bad. This season, not so much. Their defense is top 15, I would say. Their defense is even a strength at times to their team. Their run defense is a strength. They can shut down the run game, which against teams like the Patriots and teams like the Colts is going to help making those quarterbacks pass, making those passing offenses beat you. That is a helpful thing. Their passing defense isn't great, but it's decent, I would say. I don't think it's horrible like it was last season. So their Titans defense is certainly an improved unit and one that I think is a reason why they can make it to the Super Bowl. And then Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel is, I think, the most underrated coach in the NFL today. He has done such a great job with this Titans team. They're consistently tough. They're consistently physical. They consistently beat good teams. They consistently play good teams well. And so the Titans, because of Mike Vrabel, they are a threat. Now, why they couldn't or why they potentially won't make the Super Bowl? Two reasons here, two big reasons. Injuries, passing offense. Let's start with the injuries. So for the Titans, injuries, Derrick Henry's been hurt. A.J. Brown's been hurt. Julio Jones has been hurt. Their offensive line's dealt with some injury. All these guys injured, even if they are to come back, which I assume they will, the chemistry could potentially be a bit off, and the performance of the players might be a bit rusty. So you got to take that into account. So that could potentially hurt the Titans in their quest to make it to the Super Bowl. And the other thing is the passing offense. The Titans' passing offense is 23rd in yards, 24th in net yards per attempt, 18th in passing first downs. And Ryan Tannehill right now leads the NFL in interceptions. So that's the big thing. I know they haven't had their guys. They haven't had Julio for a lot of the season. They haven't had A.J. Brown for these last couple of weeks. But Ryan Tannehill's really struggling this season. He's not had the season he's had the last 2 years. He's not been playing. He's been average, but he's just not been as good as he's been the last few years. Their pass blocking offensive line is a concern, and that could potentially be taken advantage of in the playoffs. We've already seen that get taken advantage of at times this season. And these guys, Julio Jones, he's not the same guy he was a few years ago. He's not. He's not the 2016 Julio Jones. He's not the 2017 Julio Jones. He's not even the 2019 Julio Jones. A.J. Brown, he's a beast, but we don't know we don't know if he'll be rusty off an injury or not. It may take him a game. And if that game isn't a playoff game, that could potentially hurt. So the Titans, their passing offense has not been good this season. Even with their guys, they struggle at times. So that could potentially be what hurts the Titans in terms of getting to the Super Bowl. All right, so the next team in the AFC, the team I would probably put third, maybe even second in terms of likeliness to make the Super Bowl, would be the New England Patriots. So why can the Patriots make it to the Super Bowl? Dominant offensive line. The Patriots currently ranked 6th in run blocking grade by PFF. Now their other grades in pass blocking are which is kind of a good description of how they've played, I think, as an offensive line. I think maybe they're a bit better than their stats would suggest in the pass blocking kind of unit of the team, but the run blocking unit is dominant, and they can be a dominant offensive line. David Andrews, damn good player. Shaq Mason, very good player. Trent Brown has played well. Michael Onwenu has played well. They've had good offensive line play this season. And that was a unit that actually struggled, I think, earlier in the year, but it is now rounded into one of their best units, and I think a unit that is one of the reasons they can make it potentially to a Super Bowl. They're going to have to win games in the trenches, and offensively, they can certainly do that against a lot of AFC fronts that I think are certainly vulnerable. They have the best defense, not only in the AFC, but in the entire playoffs. The Patriots' defense is first in points, 4th in yards per play, 4th in takeaways, 3rd in first downs allowed, and 3rd in passing net yards per attempt. Their defense is dominant. I mean, their defense is dominant. Look at the statistics. They're dominant in every statistic outside of rush defenses statistics. They're dominant. And, I mean, they can create turnovers. They can get to the quarterback. They can shut you down in terms of their secondary against your receivers. And they have Bill Belichick, which is getting to the third reason. They have Bill Belichick, who's the Obi-Wan of the NFL. He's Dumbledore. He's all those guys. He's the smartest coach in the NFL. He's the best coach in the NFL. He's the best coach in NFL history. He is what he is, man. He can win in so many different ways. That's what he's done over his entire career, right? Look back to the early Patriots teams of the early 2000s. Run the ball first, win the trenches, play dominant defense, have your quarterback not turn the ball over. That's what they did in 2001, and it won them a Super Bowl. All right, 03, 04, they did similar things. Then they got to the mid 2000s, they go into the 2010s, early 2010s. Now they're starting to spread things out with Randy Moss. They're starting to air it out with Tom Brady, and they're still winning games. Get to the mid 2010s to the late 2010s. They surround the brilliant older quarterback with the defense and the offensive line, and they're still winning Super Bowls. They won 3 in 5 years, made it to 4. So Bill Belichick's proven he can win with any sort of style, any sort of system, any sort of, roster. He can win. He won 7 games last year with one of the worst rosters in the NFL. So many injuries, opt-outs, everything went wrong with that team last year. Cam Newton couldn't throw a football. They were winning games still because of Bill Belichick. He's the best coach in the playoffs, and that gives them a chance alone. And finally, they have experience. And I got a lot of the guys on this roster are new guys, but they've still got a lot of the old core as well. J.C. Jackson's won a Super Bowl. That offensive line, a couple of those guys, Andrews, Mason, they have experience, right? Who else is there still? McCourty has a ton of experience. Dante Hightower, a ton of experience. And Bill Belichick, of course, he's the guy. He has so much experience of being able to win games over his career in the NFL. The Patriots, since 2000, have been the best franchise by far in the NFL, and so they certainly have playoff experience. Now, why can't the Patriots win the Super Bowl or make it to the Super Bowl? It's for 2 reasons: the lack of explosivity in the passing offense and the run defense. Starting off with the passing offense. So the passing offense statistically is good and efficient, but they lack explosive plays. They lack the ability to go downfield and score cheap touchdowns and go over the top and really threaten defenses, in my opinion. And I don't even think it's a Mac Jones problem. I think it's the lack of explosive receivers on that team. So say they're down 14-3 in a game, right? Let's say that. And teams, they're willing. This kind of happened against the Colts. They're willing to give you that underneath 4-yard, 10-yard, 4-yard completion. They're willing to do that, but they're not willing to let you get back in the game by scoring over top. That's what made those Chiefs offenses of the last few years so difficult to stop. That's what partly made the 07 Patriots so difficult to stop. They had Welker and those guys, but when all else failed, they could just go up, Brady to Moss, touchdown, 50-yard completion, stuff like that. And they don't really have that at all this year. It's all underneath. It's all just, 7-yard hitches. It's screen passes. It's modified runs. It's that kind of stuff. And it's not threatening anybody, I don't think. I don't think in a comeback situation you can come back with that. You have to be able to throw downfield, and I don't know if New England can do that. The run defense as well is 28th in net yards per attempt against the run defensively. We saw Jonathan Taylor take advantage of that on the last run. He was able to cut through the heart of that defense and really just run and basically clinch that game. So I think that's kind of the flaw of the Patriots is the run defense and the passing offense from an explosive perspective. But New England, man, they're a very dangerous team. I truly believe that, and that's because of the man with the headset, Bill Belichick. All right, so the next team would be, in my opinion, the Indianapolis Colts. Why they can. Let's get him out of the way. JT, Jonathan Taylor. What else is really there to say about him, man? He's amazing. He's the best running back in football without Derrick Henry. He's fast. He's fairly elusive, I believe. He's powerful. He's strong. He can run behind that offensive line, which is another reason their offensive line is currently 5th in adjusted line yards, 8th in adjusted sack rate. I mean, they are great along the offensive line, and Jonathan Taylor's great. That run game is going to create issues for some of the lackluster run defenses that they'll see in the AFC playoffs. The team's battle tested. They have 3 wins against playoff teams. They've played Tampa Bay, almost won, controlled a lot of that game. They played, who else did they play? Baltimore. That was a game that, they could potentially see again. And they beat Baltimore badly for a part of that game. So, I mean, the Titans, they were very competitive in one of those games. Like, they've played a lot of these teams. They've beaten some of them. They have competed well against some of them. They just beat New England. Like, this team's for real. This Colts team is for real, and they're battle tested. And finally, their front seven, Darius Leonard, stud, best linebacker in the league for my money. I mean, they've got a good run defense. They've got a good pass rush. That they can do a lot of different things with their front seven, and I think Matt Eberflus's defense really utilizes that well. So, yeah, I think the Colts front seven, the Colts, there's a lot of reasons to really like the Colts. Why they can't has to do with the passing games of both sides of the ball, the passing defense and the passing offense. The Colts passing defense has currently allowed the most touchdowns of any passing defense in the NFL. They are 21st in passing defense net yards per attempt. So the pass defense for the Colts, we kind of saw Brady pick on it in the second half. We've seen Lamar pick on it in the second half. We've seen it get taken advantage of at times this season. And I really think that could potentially be their undoing. I don't love their corner core. I think it's fine. I don't think it's great. I think it's capable of being taken advantage of. And so that could be a flaw for that team. The other thing is their pass offense. Like the Colts pass offense is 27th in completions, the 22nd in yards, the 27th in first downs. This is a lot like the Patriots. They're very efficient. They can do a lot of stuff underneath, but they haven't got a lot of great receivers. They have one who I like in Pittman. He's big and strong, but outside of that, they don't have a ton of guys that I'm really wowed by. And Carson Wentz has been good this season, but he's been inconsistent at times throughout games, and he still has part of, Carson Wentz just being an idiot. Part of that with him is still there. And so that is partly why I'm not completely sure if the Colts are going to make the Super Bowl, is just because the passing offense and passing defense, I still believe is questionable. The team in the AFC that I think is best positioned to make it to the Super Bowl would be the Kansas City Chiefs. So why is that? Patrick Mahomes is the first reason. Because even though this has been a down year for Patrick Mahomes, we have still had 4 years of evidence where Patrick Mahomes has been arguably, over the last 4 years, collectively, the best quarterback in football. I know he's had a bit of a down year this year, but again, you can't forget about what Mahomes has been able to do over the last really, 4 years, right? He has been in that time over the last 4 years. He has thrown for the most yards. He's thrown for the most touchdowns. He is second in passer rating. He has won the most games. He is top 5 in fourth quarter comebacks. He has made it to the tied for the most Pro Bowls. He is one of 3 quarterbacks to have an All-Pro appearance in that stretch. Patrick Mahomes has been excellent. He's still shown this season, and he showed in the fourth quarter against the Chargers recently that he can still be a great player, and he still can be a great player. He can still make all the throws. He still has an excellent arm, big, strong, excellent arm, always has, will for the next decade, right? He's fairly, his accuracy has been off at times. His mechanics have been off at times. But if he can just work on those, and I've seen better in the last couple of weeks, then he's still potentially the best quarterback in the conference, right? The offensive line has really improved with this team. The Chiefs' passing grade has improved from 11th to 8th. The run blocking grade has improved from 11th to 3rd. Their just-in-line yards has improved from 14th to 12th, and they've maintained a top 5 ranking in adjusted sack rate. Now, the Chiefs, because they're not the same team they've been the last few years in terms of explosive plays wise, this season compared to the last couple years, I think people are kind of missing the fact that their offensive line's been really good this season. Like their offensive line has really gotten better. It had a couple rough weeks early on, but it's been really good recently. Creed Humphrey's the best center in football for my money, and that they've been not only good, but they've been dominant along that offensive line the last couple weeks when I've watched them. Their defense is red hot. The Chiefs' defense is currently eighth in points. They're sixth in takeaways. They're fifth in pressures. They're fourth in pressure percentage this season. You combine a Patrick Mahomes, who can be the best quarterback in the playoffs in the AFC, with kind of a defense that's red hot, playing its best football, ranks high in all these categories, an improved offensive line. You still have Andy Reid, right? You've still got Steve Spagnuolo as a defensive coordinator. He's excellent at what he does. And you've still got Tyreek Hill, who's still having a very good season. Maybe not his best, but very good. Kelsey, same thing. And it's like, okay, the Chiefs still have the roster to make it to the Super Bowl. Better than anybody, I would say, in the AFC. They have the experience as well. They've been a contender for years now under Reid. With Mahomes, they've made it to 3 straight AFC championship games. They've made it to back-to-back Super Bowls. They have as much experience as anybody, including New England, in these situations. Offensive inconsistency is one of the reasons why I don't think they potentially will make it to the Super Bowl. And it's just, there's been weeks where the Chiefs, when they're not playing the Raiders, just look super inconsistent offensively. Like one week, the Chiefs will look very good, but the next, they won't look good. And it's like, okay, Travis Kelce, one week looks kind of washed. The next week, he looks like the old Kelce. Tyreek Hill, one week doesn't show up. The next, he's a game breaker. Patrick Mahomes, one week looks like 2018 Mahomes. The next week, he looks like, oh my God, he's a complete disaster, right? One week they can run the football really well. One week they are just kind of defensively, at times they've been really good for a lot of the year now, but there's still that early part of the year where they were the worst defense in the league. So it's like this team, specifically this offense, has been inconsistent over the last 2 months during their winning streak, and that is still a concern to me. That is still, that offensive inconsistency is still concerning. The history as well doesn't really support this team getting to the Super Bowl. And I know that sounds weird because they've been in all these big games and all these big situations, but only 2 teams have made 3 straight Super Bowls in NFL history. The Buffalo Bills from 1990 to 1993 and the New England Patriots from 2016 to 2018. If the Chiefs make it to the Super Bowl this season, it'll be their third in a row. They'd be the third team to do that. Considering only 2 teams in NFL history have done that before, it seems like it's a very tall task for the Chiefs to be able to do that. But I do think they're well positioned to be in a position to be able to get there. So the Chiefs would be, to me, the AFC favorites as of today.